Well, we never really reported on this. There was a by-election. Both in Toronto, resounding wins by the Liberals. So everyone who's on their comments, everything who wants an election, well, look at the Conservatives right now. The Conservatives are in disarray. They did not do very well in these two major elections after all these scandals and everything. I'm actually angry with that the Conservatives didn't do very well. I couldn't find anything on their candidates. They didn't try to do much in these two by-elections, and it showed. And it showed in it. Look, we have two new Liberals in power. So anyone who's conservative leaning who wants an election, think again. They need to sort themselves out. And I know the Conservatives that are watching will be angry with this, but proof is in the pudding. Anywho, here's question period. So I say hats off to the Liberals for winning too.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Liberal caucus, our warmest congratulations to Marcy Ian and Yara Sachs on their election wins in Toronto Centre and York Centre. Marcy and Yara are deeply connected to their communities and have put kindness and compassion at the core of their service. They shared important messages with residents, and the results speak for themselves. Last night, the Conservatives did worse in both ridings than under Stephen Harper in 2015. Our government will continue to support Canadians throughout the pandemic, and unlike the Conservatives, we will continue to invest in Canada. We
will continue to fight for a better society, and we will combat hatred and division always.
Tonight's results, Mr. Speaker, are significant as for the very first time in Canadian history, 100 women will take their seats together as members of Parliament, an extraordinary moment not only for Canadian women, but for all of Canada. Welcome to the House of Commons, Marcy and Yara. Together, we will build back better.
Question orale, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in the last month, we learned the Liberal government allowed two different American billionaires to enter Canada, and they waived quarantine rules. Both times, the public safety minister said he had no knowledge of what happened. But he's just one of 5 ministers who can approve such waivers. Since the public safety minister didn't do it, it must have been the Prime Minister. So my question is for him. Why are there one set of rules for the rich friends of this government and one set of rules for everyone else?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite and Wells know that that was a decision taken on the border by locals on the ground that was made in error, and the situation was fixed afterwards. But I want to take this moment to thank all the volunteers, voters, organizers, and election workers who participated in by-elections in both Toronto Centre and York Centre yesterday. We showed that during a pandemic, Canadians continue to believe strongly in the strength of our democratic institutions. I want to congratulate Marcy Ian and Yara Sachs on being elected as the Liberal members of Parliament for Toronto and York Centre. We look forward to having these two strong women join our House.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, after weeks of being pushed by families of the victims and by my colleague from Lakeland, the government finally relented and announced the beginning of the public inquiry into the worst mass shooting in Nova Scotia in Canada's history. This was after they had to backtrack on their decision to refuse to even hold an inquiry, a decision that was panned by every Nova Scotian in this House, including members of the Prime Minister's own caucus. Mr. Speaker, why did the Prime Minister delay delivering justice to the families in Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, following one of the worst mass shootings in Canada's history, I had the sorry responsibility to speak with the members of families who'd lost loved ones, who'd had their lives and their communities shattered. I gave them a commitment that we would find out exactly what happened, what errors were made, who was to be held responsible for those errors, and demonstrate that we were committed to getting the answers all Nova Scotians and indeed all Canadians want. We proposed an inquiry that would be able to move quickly on that, but families said they wanted a national public inquiry. That's exactly what we're moving forward with, so that they get all the answers they need the way they need them.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in the last week, the Minister of Indigenous Services and the Grand Chief of the Assembly of First Nations both called on the RCMP Commissioner to resign. The Minister of Public Safety has been silent. The minister blamed CBSA officers for his failures, and now his own cabinet colleague is calling for the resignation of a chief under his watch. It's hard to believe that minister was once a chief himself. My question to the Prime Minister is simple. Who is in charge of the RCMP?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there is a long history of systemic racism in our institutions in this country, including in the RCMP. We've acknowledged, as has the Commissioner, that throughout its history, the service has not always treated racialized and Indigenous people fairly. There is no question for anyone on this side of the House that the systemic racism exists within the RCMP. We are therefore working with the Commissioner, who will bring forward meaningful change to ensure police treat all people with dignity and respect.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président, le gouvernement était toujours lent.
Mr. Speaker, the government was there during the first wave of the pandemic at the border with rapid testing and with assistance. And yet, some countries had 1 million tests a week. In Canada, almost zero. So why doesn't this government draw some lessons from the first wave and do its work properly? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, from the beginning of January, our public health agencies were holding meetings to see what was coming out of China and concerns about the coming pandemic. From the very beginning of the pandemic here in Canada, we prepared the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB, and we delivered it to millions of Canadians throughout the country. Our public servants, the public service, worked very hard to offer assistance almost immediately, assistance that people needed. The Leader of the Opposition is saying that we did the wrong thing by helping families and that we should have helped businesses instead. We did help businesses, but first we helped families, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The Prime Minister likes to pretend that he's a partner of the provinces, but his minister blamed Quebec and the provinces for the current situation. And the Prime Minister is saying he's going to interfere in areas of provincial jurisdiction. Will this Prime Minister stop blaming others and finally get to work? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we respect and understand areas of provincial jurisdiction on this side of the House, and we fully recognize that long-term care in Quebec, for example, is an area of provincial responsibility. But we want to work with Quebec, with all the provinces, to ensure that our seniors are protected throughout the country, that there is a standard of care that can reassure all Canadians, seniors and families, that we're taking care of seniors throughout the country. That's the federal government's responsibility, to ensure that all Canadians are taken care of, and that's what we're going to do.
All right, so once again, the Conservatives had a weak showing. In York, they got closer. It was 46% for the Liberals and 42% for the Conservatives. So a little bit better showing in New York, though they didn't really win. I didn't see much advertising for it, and I'm looking for this stuff. We here are looking for this stuff, and we had to dig. Anyone who's got to dig for it, no one really cares about politics. You got to slap it and put it in their face. Anyway, like I said, hats off to the Liberals, and whatever you say in the comments, we don't care. The Liberals did an outstanding job. All this bad media slightly against them and all these things that are going on, they still won handily, really, and my idea, handily won 2 different by-elections. So it shows they are the party to be ruling right now. No one else. Leave your comments below and have a good day. Stay tuned for more.